Hey there. So, in this episode, I want to talk about again something that I get lots of questions asked about, and that is are narcissists actually born that way? When they come into this world, are they born? And I suppose I'm going to talk about it from the research that I have seen and found from my own experiences. And this is really about my opinion, but again, I'm always open to different opinions and different points of view with all of this. But this is kind of the sort of stance that I am coming from with the research that I have had. So, in my opinion, no, narcissists are not born. There isn't a gene that we have found that specifies, hey, this is the gene, you are going to be a narcissist. Narcissists are formed, and they are formed in childhood because of certain family dynamics, because of their perception and interpretation of certain behavior from those around them, their mother, their father, extended family, teacher, grandparents, whoever that is. Now, when we talk about intergenerational trauma, because we know that for up to 7 generations deep, we can actually pass down that level of trauma. So, although we know there isn't a narcissist gene, if you think about, and again, I'll use an example of, let's say you've got, you look at the narcissist in your life and they have a narcissistic parent, for instance. It can almost look like there's a gene that is being passed down then from generation to generation. But actually what is being passed down is maladaptive behavior and abusive behavior because of protection. So you've got really, let's think about it in a slightly different way. Rather than thinking about narcissist as it goes down the generation, think about it as in broken relationships, lack of parenting skills, lack of love, lack of security, that doesn't install then a healthy sense of self in that baby child as they start to grow up. Now, when the work, how I approach it, it's very much using parts work, so internal family systems. And if you imagine that we all have that true self, even a narcissist, we have that true self when we come into this world, and that is just who we are. Now, dependent then on our interpretation of perception of experiences that we have during our childhood, if we have experiences that is quite abusive or neglectful or unemotional from a parent or a caregiver, as children, we interpret that as, it must be me, there must be something wrong with me. And this is where what gets formed is what we call in internal family systems an exile, a wounded younger part of ourselves, or I like to call it, that's when the self-worthiness wound starts. And everything in our system then becomes about not feeling like that. We are built for protection, we're built for safety, we're built to keep us alive and to move us away from pain. So if we have something that happens to us in our childhood, like with the narcissist, their interpretation of that is, it must be me, and a wound gets formed, the wounded younger part of the narcissist. So all of these other protector parts show up. Now, the protector parts, when we think about it from a narcissistic perspective, are kind of categorized. I like to categorize them into different elements. It's not like in the DSM where it's just 9 traits and that's it, then you're diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. It really is on a far broader spectrum, because at the end of the day, abuse is abuse, right? There is no excuse for it, but we can start then, if we're coming from a place of being trauma informed, we can start to see things with a different lens. So when we break all of this down, the relational element, the behavioral, the activation, the antagonistic nature of a narcissist, the cognitive side of this, we start to be able to see lots of protector parts then that come up with a narcissist. So I'm going to give you some examples. Manipulative, gaslighting, controlling, impulsive, angry, rageful, arrogant, exploitative, entitled, grandiose. And that's just a few of them. I have normally over 35 traits that I teach my coaching cohort about narcissism being on a spectrum. And it's really in their everyday life, each and every day, across their professional, their personal relationships as well. And that then really, all of those protector parts that come up to protect, deflect, distract away from the core wound of a narcissist will show up in those elements, like I say, lying, anger, grandiosity, argumentative, self-centered, no guilt. And addiction is a big part actually as well, as a protector part of a narcissist. So I get many messages where the narcissist might be addicted to porn or drugs or alcohol. And all of that, remember, it's never about the substance or what it is. It's always about distracting and soothing away from a core wound. So it's not that narcissists are born that way, even though sometimes it can look like it's a generational element. It could be a narcissistic parent, narcissistic grandparent. It's not the gene that gets passed down, it's the behavior that gets passed down, really. So there's a sort of generational element of all of that, because as a child, we will end up behaving in a certain way to stay safe and to move us away from pain. And then if you think about it from a narcissist perspective, then all of those parts will come up to distract and soothe away from the core self-worthiness wound that a narcissist will have, which equally as well is those feelings of worthlessness. However a narcissist may present sometimes, if they're kind of a malignant or grandiose narcissist, where they look like they love themselves and everything is about them, actually a narcissist is highly insecure. They really feel worthless on a very, very deep level. It's a very, very deep wound. So up pop all of these protector parts then to try and distract away from feeling that wound. Now, I want to add in here, this does not excuse their behavior. Just because we then know and we can explain that they're not born like this, that actually they are created due to the experiences that they have in their childhood, that doesn't excuse their behavior as an adult. Abuse is abuse, and we don't excuse abuse because we can see somebody had a, maybe neglectful or abusive or unemotional childhood. That doesn't mean we excuse the behavior. But I think as a society, if we can start to understand root causes with that curiosity, then what we can do is we can really help and support those victimized by a narcissist to recognize, the narcissist is behaving like this, not because of me, not because I'm not good enough. They're not lying to me or cheating on me because of me. They're doing that because they need to soothe their own wounds, because everything is driven in their system. Equally, it's driven in our system as well, that we don't want to feel those self-worthiness wounds. And those of us who end up in relationships with a narcissist, we will also have those self-worthiness wounds as well. And we will have lots of protector parts that come up to try and distract and soothe us away from feeling our wounds. But the difference is, the narcissist protector parts, we can never get beyond that. It almost becomes like their false sense of self, and we can't get beyond all of that to really work on their core wounds so that they can step into being their true self. So narcissists aren't born, and I certainly know when I look at my ex-husband and his childhood, I can see exactly why he behaves in the way that he does. Now, at the time when I was going through narcissistic abuse, I wasn't sitting in a place of compassion, let me say, for my ex-husband. I was also sitting in a place of anger or freeze or dissociation or protector parts for myself, because his lack of emotion or his cheating or however he was behaving, that was triggering to me, because it was like he was scratching the core wound of my inner system. So I would have those protector parts come up, like people pleasing, like perfectionism, because surely if I behave like that, like the fawn response, then surely their behavior would diminish and they would, behave in a certain way. And of course, that must mean I'm worthy, I'm good enough, lovable, and I'm important then too. So really it's about, when you see that narcissistic relationship, say with a codependent, it's like really protector parts and protector parts. So what we have to look at is, because we know the narcissist won't recognize their behavior as being toxic or abusive, there's reasons for that, and it's normally because of you. Then what we want to do is we want to help those recognize who've been victimized by a narcissist. Well, what is their core wound? Why is it they have those protector parts like people pleasing coming up? We want to help them step into their true self, so that then, narcissist behavior hasn't changed, but my reaction to that now is coming from a place of curiosity. It's not coming from a place of activation. And that's the key difference here. So a narcissist isn't born. Yes, we can understand that it comes from childhood trauma, but let's be clear here. We can still feel a sense of compassion that they behave in the way that they do. but that does not excuse abusive behavior. You know, it really doesn't. And whilst when we say it can't excuse abusive behavior and we can't change their abusive behavior, because that takes a level of ownership and responsibility, it means we can understand. The power in this is the understanding of those victimized, that it is not because of you. You know, it's not because if you were better or more enough or worthier, the narcissist wouldn't behave in that way. They would, because that's who they are attracted to, someone who gives, whilst they take. So I just want you to really understand that this is not about excusing their behavior. And you might be right now thinking, Caroline, I'm never going to feel compassion to the narcissist in my life. And I hear you, and I really want to honor and validate where you are right now. And I'm hoping that at some stage as you go along your healing journey, that it's not even necessarily about seeing compassion towards the narcissist. It's that level of understanding, not just knowing it, but really feeling it in your body, that their behavior has absolutely no reflection of you. They would be behaving like that. If I was in a relationship with a narcissist in your life, they would be treating me exactly the same. The difference being is I would receive their information from my true self and get curious about that and then set my own boundaries around that. Whereas you, if you're in that kind of healing stage, blend with your protector parts, and then you react in fight, flight, and freeze. And you might be angry back. You might get frustrated. You might go and emotionally eat. You might self-harm, whatever it is that comes up for you as a protector part to distract and soothe you away. So as science goes right now, narcissists aren't born. Behavior can have an impact dependent on your parents and grandparents and how that is passed down. But there is no narcissist gene per se. You know, we haven't found that. Maybe there will be down the line. We know science changes all of the time, don't we? But right now, we certainly know that it's not, they're not born like that. They are created, just like as a codependent, you're not born like that either. It is created in our childhood with our perception and interpretation of those experiences from those caregivers. So I hope that's really helped explain a little bit to you to know whether or not narcissists aren't born that way.